All right, welcome everyone. You would like to welcome everyone coming to listen to today's talk on online philately, one that I'm very looking forward to. I also want to thank Sparks Auctions. They're our sponsor, and thank you very much for your support. And you can go check them out at sparks-auctions.com. Every time they have an auction, I'm always there bidding because they have great Canadian material if you're a Canadian collector, and they also do all kinds of worldwide stuff. And then I'd like to thank Gerard for agreeing to come and give us a talk. He's from the Punk Philatelist, and I sent out everyone should have seen a little write-up from him. And welcome, Gerard, and I look forward to hearing your talk.
Well, thank you very much, Joe, and I'd like to thank the Royal for inviting me to give this speech. A big hello from Melbourne, Australia, where it is 9 a.m. currently as I record this, or yes, right on 9 a.m. And big shout out to Toronto, I have to say, particularly in Canada, because I am a quarter Canadian myself. My grandmother was born there, so I haven't got back there yet on behalf of the family, but she still lies somewhere there in Toronto in a cemetery that I haven't quite tracked down yet. So if you're passing by, say hi to my grandma. Bit disappointed that I can't give this speech in 2 languages for our Canadian audience. I am in the middle of learning French. C'était mon projet personnel pour COVID-19, but sadly it's not good enough for me to make a whole speech in. But it looks like we have quite an international audience, so perhaps it might be for the best not to make you cringe through my French. So yeah, I do have to unfortunately put on the glasses, which is a slightly unpunk touch, but we do what we have to when we hit a certain age. You mentioned there the blog, Joe. That's kind of why I'm here in a way. I'm talking today about online philately. I'll get more into my blog in a minute, but just a little bit into why I thought this might be a topic worth covering. And let's start with philately sort of undergoing a slight change in character, I feel, lately. If you think about how philately has always been organised, in traditional terms, there have been stamp clubs and stamp shows, and sure, many of us have always collected at home, just enjoying our own company. But if you want to exhibit competitively, it's all about getting your collection into the right kind of frames and then exhibiting it, having it judged, and all that sort of world. And if you weren't a part of that kind of organised side of philately, which I will refer to as traditional philately, as many people do these days, it was easy to sort of be disconnected from that scene. It was quite easy to sort of just think you were the only collector in the world, plotting away at home on your own. I think the internet began changing that when the internet came along back in the 90s, of course, and that allowed, first of all, it allowed collectors to bond over international boundaries. It allowed societies and dealers to be able to sell their wares on an international scale. Of course, any of us suddenly became a dealer because eBay and those sort of auction sites came along, and suddenly we were all buying and selling with each other. You didn't have to belong to a local stamp club anymore. There was kind of a world stamp club starting. But overall, I think the approach to philately still remained fairly traditional. But in more recent times, particularly with the rise of social media, a whole new and particularly younger audience has found its way into philately through other channels. And in many ways, that audience is very disconnected from what we call the traditional scene. And I think we really came to appreciate that during the COVID lockdowns of the last year or so. I think that was a time, speaking from my perspective as somebody who writes a philatelic blog, I've never felt so connected to my reading audience. And of course, all around the world, societies found ways to host online chats exactly like what we're doing today. And exhibitions found ways to convert themselves into online virtual exhibitions. It's a real discovery or a rediscovery of the internet by the philatelic community. And along the way, I think there's also been a discovery of these 2 tribes. The traditional collectors have discovered more modern collectors, perhaps generally a bit younger. They're using different means to express their collecting. They're using the social media or other aspects of the internet rather than going down to a club, which they couldn't do anyway because the clubs are all shut. So my aim today is to, I should take a step back. I'm sort of assuming that given that this is a speech for the Royal, even though I can see we have people from all over the world, I'm aiming to just give a bit of an overview to some of the ways in which people are using the internet to enjoy their collecting. And I'm sort of coming from the point of view that if you belong to a Royal Philatelic Society, let's face it, you may be of a certain vintage if it's similar to any Royal Philatelic Society anywhere else in the world. I'm not saying it's a bad vintage. In fact, I'm sure it was a great year for Philately. But it's possible that some of the more recent developments have not been, you may not be as familiar with if you're a standard traditional philatelist. So I'm not here to say you have to get involved with everything I'm about to tell you, and I'm not here to say you're doing it all wrong. I'm just here to say here's some things that people are into that you may find interesting, and it's possible that you may think that it's something that you might consider exploring yourself. Not perhaps the whole world. I'm going to show, I don't know, 15 or 20 platforms in a bit of a hurry, but you might think, oh, that one looks interesting. Another thing I won't be doing too much is giving you the nitty gritty of how to go about getting an Instagram account or that sort of thing. Broadly speaking, if there's anything that intrigues you here, we can always come and find me online or just ask a young person, because chances are if you have grandchildren, they can probably help you set it up. They'll know their way around it. So along the way, I think this talk might answer a little bit of a question that you do hear in stamp clubs and other traditional circles, which is, where are the young people going to come from? I think you're kidding yourself if you think stamp collecting will be as popular as it once was, but it is. I think it's entering subculture mode, and that kind of makes it cool, right? So you're going to learn where some of the young people are coming from, frankly. I did have a quick list of disclaimers. Have I gone through them already? Yeah, I also won't spend too much on some of the stuff that's been around for a while. I'm going to assume that to some extent you get it. The fact that you're even watching this chat for a start suggests that you're at least a little bit web savvy. So I'll assume that you kind of know the basics of how the internet works and that sort of stuff. So to go in roughly chronological order, this is the point where I'll start sharing my screen. So I'm not sure if you might lose my face, but that's not a bad thing. Here is, well, first of all, there's my blog, Punk Philatelist, that lovely Ellsworth Kelly. There's a few random images come up behind the back of that logo there, depending if you reload. I really love that set. Anyway, I've gotten distracted already. So that's my blog. That's me, Punk Philatelist, and I'll get on to how that all started in a little while. So, of course, first generation internet, this is where the internet started helping stamp collecting and philatelists out. We had anyone worth their salt went and got themselves a website. Just for fun, I looked up Canada Post's website, one of their earliest websites. This comes from, you can see the date at the top there, December 1998. Looks a bit different these days. There we are, scrolling through beautiful stuff. But there's a few, in the old one, there's a few graphics have now gone missing, but that was Canada Post's, if not actual first, then close to first website. And of course, dealers could get their websites. That's of course the modern Stanley Gibbons one, looking very flash there. Stamp magazines could go and get a website as well. And we had museums as well getting in on the action. Everybody went and got themselves a website. Other ways in which the traditional scene can be helped by the internet. I only just recently found this. It's a great resource. It's called Stamp on the Web. I think it's run, I haven't quite got to the bottom of who runs it. I think it might be, someone may be able to tell me actually. I'm not watching the chat window at the moment, but AICPM. I get the feeling they're based in Italy, but I could be wrong about that. This is just a huge portal of philately on the internet. And the reason that it's so good, sorry, I jumped ahead there, 4,000 online exhibits. If you want to look at the traditional side of exhibiting a stamp collection, there are 4,000 of them, it claims here, and they're constantly adding more. You can just click into any of these organizations that has put philatelic exhibits online. I was looking at this one, where was I? There we go. And going up at a furious rate too, I must say, because this was the one that was the top of the list yesterday when I was preparing this. And so this is just about the Finnish morning stamp. And as you can see, it's just a whole, this may not load. I noticed this took a while to load. Oh, there we go. And you can actually explode that and have a better look, have a closer look at the material and click through all 114 pages of that exhibit. So if you're missing stamp exhibitions at the moment, have a look at that, that resource. The name again was stamp, or what did I call it? Sorry, forgotten already. Hang on. What I'm messing around with here is when I try to flick between windows, Zoom's little control button comes up. Stamp on the web, that's what I was trying to tell you. Have a look at that if you're interested. So, so yes, that's the internet coming along. Yeah, that's right. I've done with all that stuff. Great. And as a collector myself, I was a mad keen child collector. Got into it in primary school, through into a little bit of high school. It probably destroyed my social credibility, but then of course, like so many others, I put it aside for 20 years and largely ignored it until I was maybe heading into my late 20s. I'm not sure that maths adds up, but anyway, sometime around my late 20s, I started poking through this site, and I always wanted to own every Australian stamp when I was a kid. I couldn't afford to. And then one day I was poking through eBay and I went to the stamps section and I went to Australia, and here were some of the stamps that I wanted back when I was a kid that I couldn't afford. And I thought, wow, maybe I could finish off my stamp collection. And the next thing you know, I was back in. The bug came back. I was hooked again. So it was thanks to eBay that I now am a collector again and that I run a Philatelic blog. So that's where it all started. Of course, we now have other auction sites like Dalcamp and Hipstamp and so on. And then as the internet continued, we started to get chat boards. I didn't want to leave anyone out, so I can cycle through certainly some of the main ones: your stamp boards, your stamp bears, your stamp community, stamp exchange, Stamporama, the stamp forum. I probably missed some out there along the way. And that was a good way to meet people online, to discuss the things you have in common, to find out information. They all have their own quirks. They all have their own personalities, each of those stamp forums, depending on who's in them and who runs them and what they're into. But it was that was a great way to, as someone returning to collecting, to sort of find a community online and to learn a bit more about, to try and figure out what I wanted to do with this hobby that I was rediscovering. Something else I might mention at this point, and this is something that's a little bit newer. So there is a site called Reddit, and the idea, it's not that new, but it's perhaps slightly newer than some of these stamp forums. Now on Reddit, you can find a page dedicated to almost anything you want in the world, but there is a Reddit Philately page. So you get there by going reddit.com, reddit.com/r/philately. And it's just a relatively friendly collection of people who pop in and say, hey, check out this thing that I bought, or hey, who can tell me more about this stamp, that sort of stuff. That happens just around the clock because, of course, it's international. There's another Reddit thread. If you pop into Reddit Philately and say, hey, what's this worth? You'll be dispatched off to another one called Ask Stamp Collectors. So you can see there, it's Ask Stamp Collectors. That is nearly always people popping in and saying, hey, what's this old stamp worth? And being told it's not worth much, because welcome to stamp collecting. But it's every now and then something interesting pops up, or you'll find somebody who is new to the hobby will come along and post a photo of something they've just inherited, and you can really see them getting into it in real time the more they learn about this material, which is one of the small ways that we are finding new collectors now and then. I think inheritance is a big way to go about it. I'm seeing a lot of younger people come along with grandpa's collections, and even if they're told that it's not actually worth much money, which is usually the first question, it's not uncommon for people to say, I'm going to keep it anyway. I think they look cool. I might look more into this material. Excuse me for a moment while I have a sip of my tea. So here I was getting back into stamp collecting. I was reading some magazines. I was online. But, you know, when it comes to philatelic writing, I was noticing a bit of a theme from the materials that I was reading. It was largely very specialist. It was largely very colonial. It was, if I may generalize, very much 80%, 90% old men writing about old stamps. And they were also very much into the details, the little fly speck varieties, this excitement about a perforation variety having been discovered. Now, I am actually enough of a nerd to appreciate that it's exciting if you find a rare perforation variety. But I was looking at this hobby and I was thinking, how on earth would I go about getting somebody my own age into this? Like, it's very hard to sort of say, hey, read this magazine, if you hand them a magazine that's full of people talking in this arcane language and frankly, sometimes a little bit drearily about this hobby that can be so fascinating. And that's what that was kind of annoying me a bit, to be honest. There are such great stories about stamp collecting, about countries that have nearly gone to war over a stamp. People have been murdered for stamps. There's so much cool stuff out there. Quite regularly, there are new issues that lead to more controversies, or there's just some fabulous designs. I wasn't seeing a lot of talk about the design in the magazines and the articles I was reading. There was a little bit of, here's a new stamp, here's another new stamp, here's what it commemorates, but there wasn't much talk about, look how they actually went about putting this stuff on the stamp. And that's something that I find very interesting. And so that's when I thought, why don't I start a blog? And I don't really know which audience I was writing for other than me, just as a bit of a creative challenge. And I started this blog called The Philatelist. And the idea was that it would just take a bit more of a refreshing approach to philately, that it would try to address and explain and maybe educate in the way that traditional philately works. But along the way, we would have a bit of fun, look into some of the new issues, and perhaps have a few opinions now and then that might ruffle some feathers. And I must admit, there's one thing I do regret, which is, and I'll set the scene here by saying I am a writer by trade. It's my job to write characters for television mainly. That's what I do for a living. So when I set out to write this blog, I did first write it in character. I thought, what would be the complete opposite to the kind of writers I'm reading in stamp magazines at the moment? And I thought the answer would be probably a young woman with a slightly sweary mouth. And so the early year or so of this blog, I was writing in that persona. What I didn't expect was that it would be quite popular. And the other thing that I was delighted to learn was that there were actually young women with sweary mouths who were actually out there collecting stamps already. I didn't need to invent this character because she was already out there in real life. I made a mistake, which is a real learning moment in our current culture, I think, which is I assumed that because I wasn't hearing a certain voice, that the voice didn't exist. But what was really going on was that the voice just wasn't in the conversation at all. And that's why I had no chance to see it. I've got a bit deep here, but long story short, I realized this was unsustainable. And I eventually wrote out my fictional creation. She went off to the jungle and she handed the blog over to me. Even at the time I did that, I was still kind of pretending she was real. But these days I've come clean and I've said, I apologize to anyone who feels offended. I apologize particularly to a couple of my friends who I may or may not have dealt with as my fictional character. But the last thing the internet needs is another bloke out there pretending to be a woman. So I've put all that behind me, and I am the writer of Philatelyst and always have been. So that is this blog here. We saw it before. So if you haven't seen it, here's a bit of a look. There's a few stories there about recent issues. Some of them dig into political stuff. This one, Witnessing History, is about COVID and the way COVID is affecting the mail. This one here is a bit of it's a long one, but I'm very proud of it. It's talking about the way that Australia has dealt with its legacy of James Cook discovering the East Coast, and about the relationship that discovery has with Australia's Aboriginal people, and the way that's been reflected in stamps over the years. Over the course of COVID, which is the sort of post you're looking at the moment, it became a little bit of a bulletin board of, hey, look what's happening here, look what's happening there. Over the next few months, I'll be heading back into being less of what's going on around us and a little bit more about what I reckon about stuff. So as you go further and further back, you will find more and more stuff about Australia, because it sort of mainly started as a bit of a blog reviewing Australian new issues, but I've broadened the scope now. I'm looking all around the world. Need to look a bit more at non-English speaking countries, I have to say, but of course that tends to be the media I read because that's my own language. So I'm a big fan of modern stamps. It's funny, I'm a little bit cynical at times of some of the money spinners, like this Game of Thrones issue. But on the other hand, I'm a Game of Thrones fan, and I actually love that issue. So I have a bit of a bet each way when it comes to some of the modern stuff. I will just, so that's a blog, by the way. In terms of explaining to someone who may not be as much into the internet, blogs have been around for a while, but if you've heard the word and you wonder what it means a weblog, and it's essentially, it's a column. Think of it like a newspaper column, except you don't have to be in a newspaper these days. You can just write your own and put it on the internet. So that's what that is. I did that through a site called wordpress.com. If you go to wordpress.com, you can start your own and have your say on what you think about any stamps that you have in your collection or any stamps that are coming out. I'm going to run through a few more blogs that I sort of have on my radar. Don't read this as the best of or my list of my favorites. I just thought here's a sample of the sort of stuff that I can read along the way. This is the Philatelist, who writes long pieces based on a stamp. I realize I'm scrolling quite quickly there. I wouldn't expect you to be able to read too much of it, but a fairly worldwide scope from the Philatelist. This is CDD. Quite a few dealers write blogs on the side. Michael here from CDD writes entertaining blog with covering some of the new issues and some of the stuff that crosses his path. Same with Norvik Philatelic's blog, which comes out of Great Britain. Particularly interested in modern UK issues, which is one of the fields that I'm interested in. And then we have, I quite enjoy Commonwealth Stamps Opinion. As Canadian collectors, you might enjoy this as well. I don't always agree with the opinion. In fact, I like to disagree, but still a great coverage of Commonwealth stamps as they come out. Philately Things is written by, making sure I do have the right person. I do. Casey Jo White, who is a professional philatelic curator who you may have seen. She's been very heavily involved with the American Philatelic Society stamp chats. So sorry to mention the competition there, Royal, but so Casey does a great blog here as well called Philately Things, just covering whatever crosses her path. And I was delighted to see on one of the other Royal talks, Robin pop up, who runs Great Britain Machins as the Machin Nut. This is, I don't know if it counts as a blog or if it's just a reference source, but if you are ever sorting your UK stamps, as I have been in recent years, and you're trying to figure out what's going on with a certain kind of, or you're trying to get to the bottom of what a certain kind of stamp is, this site has been amazing. So when I saw Robin pop up, I watched his whole talk, and right at the end, I went, oh, he's that guy. So Robin, if you're out there and watching, thank you very much. You've helped me organize my collection a lot. So about halfway through, if you're wondering, I've covered off the basics of the internet. We're going to head into some of the more recent stuff that you probably would have heard plenty of. I'm not going to go too obscure. You would have heard of a bunch of this stuff, but let's talk a bit briefly about what all these sites are. So this here is Twitter. I'm currently logged in as the Punk Philatelist. What I'm watching here is a feed of all the people I follow on Twitter, and most of them are stamp related. So you can see people posting just, there's some new issues. They post up stuff from their own collections. And what I like about Twitter is it's quite conversational, quite conversational. It's, hey, check out this stamp. What do you think about this? And people will jump in and have comments. Here's somebody commenting on a Finnish postmark there. A Philately Lovely there has jumped in and talked about how much he wants to go to Finland. So just to check out my profile on Twitter, what my profile does generally is link to the posts that I've put up. There's a few plugs for this talk there. Occasionally I react to stuff that other people has put up. Twitter is like having an ongoing conversation with your friends. And all the tweets, of course, are fairly short. So you're not going to write a massive article about a stamp on Twitter. You just put a few lines in, have a look at this. Here's what I like about this. What do you think about that? And Twitter's probably it's my home ground as far as social media goes. I'm very much a Twitter native. We also have Facebook. Not a massive fan of Facebook personally, but I do have a Punk Philatelist page there. So you can see there, that's again, a few plugs for this show. Facebook does tend to, it's a good place particularly if the demographic of Facebook runs from about 35 to 50. And it's a good place to go if you like sitting around and chatting about stuff. Also, you can look for areas of interest that you might share with other people. That's a German stamp collection. I was actually trying to click on the other link there, Vatican Philatelic Society. And I know the Royal has a Facebook page as well. So people put up posts. You can share them around to your own friends. You can get involved with a bit of a description afterwards. I should say I haven't vetted any of these links. Apologies if anyone says any naughty words. Not like I would ever do that. This is Instagram. Now let's talk about the way that new collectors are being found through social media. Instagram is probably the king because Instagram is a visual platform. This is about sharing pretty photos, and that's pretty much it. So what I've done here in Instagram is I've searched here for the hashtag Philately, and it's brought up nearly 500,000 posts. And by and large, it's people putting up, oh, look, someone's made a desk and covered it with stamps. People putting up photos of stuff from their collections. Dealers sometimes put up what's for sale. It's just a beautiful medium. If you're into stamps, this is basically like leafing through someone else's stamp album. And that's pretty much how I treat it. Usually my posts are connected to the stories I've just put up on the blog. But again, it's just a great way to highlight. I like highlighting individual stamps. I'm cutting back on the amount of text I put in my posts in more recent times, but just some great, a great way to show off a stamp, which of course, if you're looking at this on a smartphone, which many people are, it just fills out the whole screen, and it is a great way to appreciate, particularly as I was saying before, I'm into design, and it's a great way to appreciate the design of a stamp by looking at it on Instagram. So highly recommended for stamp collectors. Next, we have YouTube. Sure, I went and started my fun little blog, but I have done absolutely nothing for Philately compared to what Graham Beck has done with his YouTube channel, Exploring Stamps. He's been fairly prominent during the COVID shutdown. There's a good chance he may have crossed paths with Graham somewhere else. But Graham started by taking up the hobby when he was an older collector, and he started way back his very first videos. I haven't even explained what YouTube is. All right, for those who don't know, it's you make movies and you put them on the internet. That's how it works. So Graham started by exploring his own stamp collection, and then along the way, he's taught us how to go about soaking stamps. He's taught us so much about the history behind various stamps. It's a great series, and there are so many videos to watch now. So I thoroughly recommend having a look at Graham's Exploring Stamps. There are some other philatelic channels available at youtube.com. Some of the others include TED Talk Stamps, where Ted, the very likable Ted, takes us through his collection and gives us some other tips on how to collect. And Mallard Stamps is one that I quite enjoy. That was follows a collector who, again, someone who took it up new to the hobby, and right from the start has just followed that collector's development in the hobby. So again, you can see heaps of videos. You can also see the times here. They don't generally go for very long. It's sort of 4 minutes, 5 minutes. You don't have to sit down and spend all day. You can just watch one on the bus on the way to work. So I think that's, oh yeah, and I was going to mention, again, apologies for mentioning the competition, but the American Philatelic Society did run stamp chats right through COVID, and there are now so many of them online. People talking about the state of the hobby, people talking about their specialist interests. And I should mention the previous chats done for the Royal as well are available at the Royal's website too. So that's YouTube. Now, that covers off probably what I would think of as the main social media that most people have heard of, most people perhaps have considered getting into. I just thought I'd cover off a couple. Actually, there's one more branch that I was going to tell you about. I'm going to skip ahead. Oh, yeah, we're going to get to TikTok. I thought I might mention podcasts at this point. You hear the word podcast a lot these days. Don't feel stupid if you don't know what it means, because plenty of people do, and it took me a long time as well. Think of podcasts as being a radio show that anyone can put on and then anyone can listen to. All you need is really these days a smartphone or a computer. You can make your own radio show and you put it out there on the internet, and people can listen to it whenever they like. They don't need to wait for it to come on the airwaves. There's a bunch of stamp podcasts. Stamp Show here today is a bunch of American dealers chatting away. They've just passed 319 episodes. It was I see that episode 300 is at the top of that page. So I don't know about what the discrepancy is there with the 319. Anyway, that's been around for a long time. The Postcardist is a podcast which is all about postcards, as the name would suggest. 100 more than 100 episodes. If you're into your postcards, you can listen to them. And podcasts are great if you're heading somewhere. If you've got your smartphone, of course, you can download your podcast onto your smartphone, or you can just listen to it over your data, assuming you have enough. Plug it in, put the earbuds in your ears, and away you go. You can also, if you don't have a smartphone or if you're not on the go, you can easily just sit at a computer and listen to a podcast. You can start one playing and do your housework and have a podcast going in the background. It's a good way to sort of fill the time if you're home on your own. And another one I thought I'd mention is Stamp Stories, because it's Canadian based. So that's been around a little while too. I think the last one, there seems to have been a bit of a gap since the last one, but there's still a bunch of shows that have been put together there by our host Adrian. The last one was November last year, but hopefully he'll be back again soon. And this one's worth a look to, Dissecting Philately. It is about stamps, and it's also from the point of view of someone who's a professional anatomist. So you learn a little bit about stamps and a little bit about anatomy as you go. It's just one of the quirky little podcasts that I like that they're out there. And it just shows a little bit of the fact that not everything stamp related has to be about perforation varieties on a stamp that came out when George was king. So they are the podcast. Now, I thought I'd also just mention a couple of other slightly more modern sites. This is a look at, what have I done? Discord. This is the Discord server. And what's going on here? There's a lot going on here, but this is sort of like popping into the middle of a conversation. Down the side here, we have various subheadings that are covering. Sorry, I should explain what Discord is. It's a bit like what I mentioned before about Reddit. This is a place that people can come to discuss a specific common interest. So in this case, I'm in a Discord server that is called International Philatelic Promoters. And you get in by invitation. Anyone who's interested in stamps can jump in. And you click through the conversations. It's kind of a little bit like the old school bulletin boards. It just tends to be more instant. Instead of sort of combing through what's come in since you left, you're more likely to just go, what's going on right now? And you pop in, have a bit of a chat with the people who are in there. You can chat about general topics, or you can chat through specific areas. Like right now, you can see someone's put some comments into the Asia section. And again, I'm scrolling through fairly quickly, but that just gives you a bit of an idea of what's going on. You can also chat directly with specific individuals if you find you have something that you want to talk about outside of the public sphere. I've only just recently joined this Discord server, but I've found it quite fun. It is the sort of thing that perhaps, Discord it came about through gamers, through computer gamers. It is a fairly younger audience. I'll be honest and say if you're an older collector, perhaps not particularly used to internet ways, Discord might blow your mind. It might be a bit much to take in. I'd suggest trying some of the other social medias first. I thought I'd also mention TikTok. I'm not on TikTok, but it's very big among teenagers, people in their 20s at the moment. Not a huge stamp collecting presence, but what TikTok is it's people just make very short videos, usually set to music and generally made on their phones, and they put them out there. So I did find a couple of stamp ones. Here is Noah trying to impress people with his stamp collection.
So I'm a philatelist. It means I collect stamps.
Oh, poor Noah. But don't worry, he does better. Yeah.
So I'm a philatelist. It means I collect stamps.
Thank you. Pretty much the same reaction I get when I tell my friends that I collect stamps. Philately is an online stamp dealer who actually also has a TikTok channel and puts up cute little videos like this.
Hello everyone, I hope you had a good day. Today's stamp of the day is this 70-cent stamp from Switzerland, issued in 1999, has a picture of Pingu on it. As you can see, the parcel that Pingu is holding has string wrapped around it, when in fact, Swiss Post don't accept parcels with string around, so they had to reissue this stamp with a parcel with no string.
So there we go. I'll let that one go. That's just to give you a bit of an insight of what TikTok does. So the message is to anyone younger watching or who might be also on TikTok, we are there. Come and find us. I haven't started a TikTok channel myself yet for political reasons mainly, but if you're out there, get on board and be a part of it. I thought I might show you. Oh, that's right. There was one more thing. Philately got a mention there in TikTok. This is Philately's site at a website called Patreon. Now, the way that Patreon works is you can go and subscribe to somebody's channel, which in this case is called Philately. As far as I could tell, Philately seems to be the only Philatelic Patreon. I could be wrong about that. There would be other podcasts and other people like that who may use Patreon to raise funding, but here you can come to Philately's page and you can sign up. Depending how much you want to pay per month, you get a bunch of goodies every month, anything up to 150 stamps per month. It's basically like a subscription service. And along the way, you can also get discounts at, well, the Etsy store, which I haven't got to yet, but I'm about to. So I thought to wrap up, I'll show you a few other areas that may not quite cover. By the way, I'm going to actually just pause for a moment. Joe, am I still right to keep talking? I realize I've just barreled through. Give us a thumbs up. Okay. Lovely.
Yeah, no, still good.
So a couple of little corners of the internet where, look, this won't strictly count as philately, particularly in a traditionalist worldview, but they are a couple of other ways that people are getting involved with stamps online. And in their own way, they are also feeding new collectors into the scene. Post-crossing. Post-crossing works like this. You sign up, you get given somebody's address, and you send a postcard to that person. It could be anywhere around the world. It's kind of a modern take on being a pen pal. And then at some later point, another postcard will arrive, probably not from the person you sent it to, from somebody else. And it's quite addictive from what I understand. It's not something I've done myself. I thought what I should do is show you something on Instagram. If I look up hashtag postcrossing on Instagram, what you'll see is all this beautiful mail being sent out by postcrossers. It's not always postcards, it's often letters, but postcrossers very famously commonly go to just enormous lengths to make their mail absolutely beautiful. Like, what a delight it would be to receive that in the mail. Now, from a collecting point of view, you would say, well, that's a bit philatelically contrived. Well, maybe it is. And quite often the mail that's used is not even current mail. It's old stamps, because they love buying up old stamps and using them on their mail. But I have seen more than one postcrosser just come to this for the fun of sending postcards back and forth and segue from there into collecting stamps. And in the meantime, they're soaking up all those unused stamps that are clogging the market. So that's probably not a bad thing. That's what postcrossing is. I don't know what I'm doing back there. What have I done? Oh, I see what I've done. I've jumped ahead a bit. Sorry. Excuse me, digital philatelist. You can wait for a moment. NaCoWriMo that stands for International Correspondence Writing Month. And every February, it sets its participants the task of, can you handwrite and mail or deliver one letter, card, note, or postcard every day during the month of February? And that's another way that people are just getting into snail mail. And I'm going to go back to my Instagram page here and just look up NaCoWriMo. And not quite as big as postcrossing, but again, here's a whole bunch of people saying, oh, check out all this lovely mail I've got. And that's come out of NaCoWriMo. This is all part of a movement towards, or back towards, snail mail, which is to say old-fashioned mail and away from email. And I think it's had a bit of a kick during COVID-19 as well. People got into writing letters again. So a search for snail mail or those sort of related terms on Instagram will produce these beautiful images of people sending letters to each other. And that can only be a good thing for the hobby, I think. For one thing, it means more used stamps, hooray. So stamp art is a movement that's worth having a look at. Stamp art is about taking stamps and using them as materials to produce artwork. Now, some of the traditionalists will snort at this and say, how dare you, what are you doing to these beautiful stamps? But my personal view is that if those beautiful stamps are largely worthless and they're sitting in a box in a dealer's attic, no one wants to buy them, by all means, turn them into art. This is the page of Suzanne Ray, who trades as Art Stamped, and she is currently the chairman of the Philatelic Traders Society in the UK, actually, as it happens. So she's part of the industry. I always like that one. It's a stamp cow there that's entirely made of stamps. She's got a combi that I quite like as well too, actually. So there we go. There's the combi made out of Machen stamps. Stamp art, another exponent of stamp art is Tonya Gillings. What she does is she takes a stamp and then she paints around it. So let's take a look at this one, for example. Bear with me while I pull it up. So you can see this here in the middle is a Great Britain steam train stamp from the Great Central Railway. But she's actually gone and done this beautiful, what looks to me like a watercolor painting all around it that merges so seamlessly with the stamp itself. I think they're actually beautiful works. You can even see she's continued the line of the postmark there as well. Tonya is on Instagram too, well worth a follow if you want to see more of those kind of artworks. So that's a bit on stamp art for you. And I want to also mention Etsy. So Etsy it's a marketplace, online marketplace. It's a bit like eBay. The only thing is Etsy tends to be more geared towards craft, people who make things and want to sell them. So it does attract a certain amount of philatelic activity. That's the landing page. Here is someone selling stamp art on Etsy. It's a good place to go if you want to buy some stamp art. And you can also get these sort of things where people have taken stamps and made them into other objects. There's a fair bit of stamped jewelry out there if you want to buy something a bit special for the weekend, then I can recommend Etsy as well. That sort of concludes our tour. We're right on the 40-minute mark. Hope I haven't gone too long. I know sorry. The other thing I wanted to mention about Etsy is you can go there and just buy stamps. Like you can just buy stamps for your collection, old school style, like from a dealer. So that's been a real whirlwind of a tour through what's going on online. I think it will be a good thing if out of COVID we can somehow do a bit more of uniting traditional and what we might call modern collectors. I don't think these people are too different at all. We take different approaches. I'm a bit of both. When I say we, I'm talking about we collectively. I would love to try and teach modern collectors a bit more about the traditional side of things. I do also think that traditional exhibiting will need to find a bit of a way forward into the future. I don't know how long we can continue to be married to our frames, but that's a world I'm not into very much just yet. So I don't know how much I'm really allowed to say about that. I do want to give a big plug to someone who's a friend of mine, the Digital Philatelist. If you want to follow up on anything that was in my talk, guaranteed it will be on this site. James does an amazing job of just collating everything philatelic on the internet. If you want to check out blogs, Facebook, Instagram, the Discord server is there, Instagram pages, Twitter, podcasts. Just instead of having to watch back my talk and grab all the little references that I make to all the websites, just head straight to Digital Philatelist here, and you will have easy access to all the links you could possibly need to enjoy philately online. It's also arranged very usefully by collecting. Like there are different fields. If you're interested in different fields, you can click through those menus. There are countries, A to K and L to Z. So if you're into a particular country, just clicking on anything will produce links that are relevant to your interest. There's one there, Spanish West Africa. Found a blog there. And also for the thematic collectors, you're not forgotten as well. If you want to dig up a theme, archaeology, for example, there it is. Bit of a background, and here are some archaeological philatelic blogs. Does a vastly better job than I could have in this talk. So nice work, James. All right, Joe. Well, I think I'm done for now. I hope I haven't bored you all to death? Hopefully
No,
not.
I don't think so. That was fascinating. If anyone wants, throw some questions in the Q&A, and we'll see if Gerard can answer them for you. I know a lot of the stuff like TikTok and Discord and all that, I've all heard of it all, but I've never participated in any of it. And it looks fascinating. Instagram, I know people that have Instagram accounts, never participated in it myself. I may be dating myself as the only social media I really do is Facebook, which you said is for, the older people anyways, right?
When I say that is my demographic too. I'm slightly older than I look. So I see there was a comment about objecting to the age comment in the chat.
Okay.
I'm very close to being an old man myself. So.
Okay, we have some questions here. Can you predict what the hobby will look like 20 years from now?
Oh, wow. First thing is I hope it still exists in some form. Yeah, look, I don't know how much people are still going to be into the idea of putting together a traditional style exhibit and having it judged by somebody. I suspect a newer generation will be increasingly more like, look, here's what I'm into, and I don't care what you think, but have a look. So yeah, I suspect it will be largely online. Maybe there will still be stamp shows, that sort of thing. I'm involved with a stamp club, and the stamp club I'm involved with is still fairly healthy, but a long-running stamp club here in Melbourne just recently voted itself into oblivion for lack of membership. So I'm just not sure. I suspect maybe that organised side of Philately, of stamp clubs and regular competitions and exhibitions, that might end up going the way of the dodo. I hope not. Some are more negative than I am. I hope there might be some way I think it might just need to change a little bit. But perhaps increasingly stamp collectors will gather more in perhaps pubs rather than clubs.
I know online Philately, online exhibiting, all that has taken off like crazy. So I could see that growing huge, just larger and larger and larger. I don't think Philately's going anywhere. I just think it's going to get more online.
That's right. And of course, online exhibiting presents its own challenges, like how do you make sure somebody actually owns the material, or do you just invent a new class where you can put stuff in that you don't own? But what is exciting about the potential for online exhibiting is that we can move away. At the moment, it's scans of frames. So for anyone who doesn't know this language, frames are quite literally the frames you put your exhibition in, your collection in when you exhibit. And I think I think the easiest way to try and get across my vision is, after an election, sometimes you go to a news website and you can click on any electorate or any constituency, and it'll pull up the constituency and it'll tell you who got which votes. I could see an exhibit looking like that. Here's a stamp, click on the stamp pops out at you. Here's the information about that stamp. It could be very interactive, and I think that would make some really engaging kind of exhibiting. Possibly more engaging than some of the exhibits I've seen in my time.
Well, why do the online exhibits have to be within a standard frame? They can be anything, and that's your point, and that's great. I think we should look at that.
That's right. And then from a judging point of view, you would justifiably ask the question, well, how do we make sure everyone's competing on the same level or in the same field? There obviously some sort of standardization would probably need to be involved. To get back to your earlier question, the other big question is, how long are we even going to have stamps for? Iceland has been the first country to just say that it's not economical to make stamps anymore. It's only a matter of time, I think, before other countries follow, and stamps will probably not be with us anymore as an average. I mean, already at my post office, you have to ask if you want a stamp on the mail. Otherwise, you're just going to have a docket printed off from the counter machine. So we don't have cigarette cards anymore, but there are still cigarette card collectors. They're just the numbers, I suspect, will dwindle just because the visibility of stamps will dwindle in society. That's all. Sorry to end on a sad note.
John Smith says, fantastic talk. Really opened my eyes so much I had no idea existed. A wealth of content. Thank you. My past experience has been limited to stampworld.com. Are you familiar with it?
No, it wasn't actually. What maybe I have. I'm quickly Googling on my stampworld.com. Actually, I must have seen it because it's come up as a link that my computer remembered. So I've got a funny feeling I'm going to see this and go, oh yes, oh okay, yes. So that's an online catalog, of course. That's why I've been there. There's a few online catalogs too. I think they vary in quality, but that's another interesting thing in terms of the future of the hobby. How much longer are people going to keep buying paper catalogs if you want to know what your stamps are worth? There are already stamp catalog companies that operate more on a subscription basis now, which probably makes more sense. So that was a thought bubble. I wasn't really going anywhere with that. But yes, yeah, I have seen Stamp World. It's a useful resource.
Ingo asks, he was the gentleman that did that talk on the booklet stamps you were talking about earlier.
And yes, I enjoyed that, Ingo. Thank you very much for that.
Do you think digital exhibiting can expand beyond the boundaries of frames? Actually, I think we kind of talked about that a little bit.
Yeah, we ended up covering that in the end. But yes, I think the idea of frames is probably something that I think that people will only lose the concept of frames, at least those of us who've been around traditional philately, will only lose the concept of frames when we see amazing examples of what else could happen instead. But at the moment, in terms of trying to talking about making exhibitions go online, well, the biggest problem is, how do you say to your average Joe, hey, take your collection and turn it into something amazing online if you're not into computers or computer coding? I think it will take somebody to build a platform that makes that easy for everyone. I think that will be the biggest technical hurdle. And once that's done, we might really start seeing some progress.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that needs to be done, because I think, that would be amazing if you can get something that's specifically designed for online that you can look at.
Yeah. Sorry, I forget.
Yeah, next question. How are young people introduced to Philately today?
Yeah, just speaking anecdotally, I think depending who we're talking about, young people, kids, sometimes there are still programs in schools. Of course, so much is asked of the education system these days. I don't think the postal system gets quite as big a look in as it used to. I get from a lot of people my own age and younger, it goes back to something I mentioned in my talk, which is you inherit grandpa's collection. Quite frankly, grandma and grandpa pass away, someone gets the stamp album. It nearly always comes with a promise that these are so old that must be worth a fortune by now, and it nearly always turns out that they're not. But I'm seeing that there's quite a steady so the words just escaped me. What I'm seeing a lot of online is people who come to somewhere like, say, Graham's YouTube channel, or they come to a stamp chat board, or to one of those Reddit pages that I showed, and they sort of say, I've just got this album, what do I do? And it's really important to get around those people. It's very important not to judge anyone who wanders in the front door not knowing where they are, just because they don't know anything. And when those opportunities are taken to sort of say, look, what you've got there, it's not worth anything monetarily, but look at the beautiful quality of the engraving, or did you know that country doesn't exist anymore, and you could form a full collection fairly cheaply. These are the sort of little hooks that we can use to get people into the hobby. And furthermore, just to how people are getting into it, Instagram and social media in general, but particularly Instagram, it's funny how just being able to see these beautiful coloured images of beautiful stamps actually does occasionally turn someone into a collector. And actually, I should also say, modern stamp issues, I've seen people take up stamp collecting because they loved a certain issue. Often it's a thematic collection where they might say, wow, that space stamp was amazing. I think I'm into space stamps now. And that's good. How much that can continue while we're not actually, as we increasingly don't use stamps on our mail, I'm not sure. But yeah, that's why modern stamp design is really important. A good, engaging stamp program is fantastic.
So you're saying that you think Instagram is one of the major drivers today?
I don't know about a major driver, but I think it's doing a little bit of a background job, sort of feeding the hobby out into the mainstream.
Maybe I'll have to check out Instagram more. Another question. ironic about Iceland Post discontinuing stamp. Some of us believe it was the post offices and their greed that ruined collecting by issuing way too many needless stamps.
Exactly. It's why I stopped collecting Australia after the year 2000. They just started putting out so many stamps, and I just couldn't keep up. I think Australia have eased their foot off the pedal a bit lately, but yeah, it was just that's true. I mean, if many collectors are completists, and they would go to the post office and buy every stamp that came out, but also many collectors are working on a budget, and so many of us just couldn't keep up. So it's a shame.
Same thing in Canada. No question, just a comment here from Scott English, who's one of those APS guys, by the way.
Yes.
Thanks to the Royal and Gerard for doing this informative talk. The hardest quest is pushing digitalization in philately. Please keep bringing the topic and talk to the hobby. That's a super fantastic point. The more online stuff, the more young people are going to be attracted. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think so.
Thanks. Great ride of a talk. Yes,
Thanks,
that's true. I really enjoyed it so far myself. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just take a minute here to thank a bunch of people. I'm going to stop the recording, and I'm going to promote everyone up to panelists so they can all talk and socialize a little bit. So thank you for giving this fantastic talk. I really enjoyed it. I think online philately is the way of the future, and it's going to be more and more. And I hope a lot of people learned a lot. I know I did. So that's great. I'd like to thank everyone for coming. You know, that's why we run these. We want people to have a moment to have fun in stamp collecting and get a chance, even though COVID's here, and check out different people from all over. And the best part is we get to talk to people from all over the world. What's the chance of me talking to a guy who lives in Australia about stamps in the normal world? Online is the way to go. Oh, by the way, I'm officially inviting you to Capex 22 if you're interested, a big stamp show in June of 2022 held in Toronto, if you can make it up. And then I'd like to thank the Royal, and I'd like to thank, again, Sparks Auctions for sponsoring us. Thank you very much. These things couldn't go on without all the support from the Royal and sponsors like Sparks Auctions. So thank you.